Ginsburg's death is sure to set off another partisan battle during an already highly contentious election year. Here to discuss what this vacancy on the Supreme Court will mean is CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reid. She's at the Supreme Court, and CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Paula, let's start with you. And we just heard Nicole mention some of this at the end of her report. Will President Trump nominate a successor to Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Well, good morning, Dana. Sources tell me the president will absolutely nominate a replacement and do everything in his power to push that person through, even if he is not elected to a second term. Just last week, the president released names of possible people he would consider for any Supreme Court vacancy. The list included judges he's already appointed to the federal bench, including senators, like Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton. Now, the president hoped that this list would galvanize his conservative supporters, because back in 2016, following the death of Justice Antonin Scalia, candidate Trump released a similar list. And that list prompted a lot of conservatives, particularly evangelical Christians, to give him another look and ultimately helped propel him to the White House. The president has said, aside from issues of war and peace, this is the most important decision an American president can make.
So far, Paula, it seems like some are framing the election as a referendum on COVID and the president's facing of COVID-19. How do you see this impacting the election now?
It will be significant because the majority of voters say that the Supreme Court is an important factor in how they vote. And this comes at a tumultuous time for President Trump. His handling of the COVID pandemic is not seen favorably by the majority of voters. As you noted, the Biden campaign is trying to frame this as a referendum on his handling of COVID. And this gives the Trump campaign a chance to reframe this election as a referendum on the Supreme Court. And for President Trump, that's good news. That's an opportunity for him to potentially galvanize independent voters, women, and those voters who don't like him or his Twitter account. He's also out ahead of his opponent because he's already released this list. Now, the Biden campaign, Joe Biden has said that he would like to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, but he has not released a list of names. The campaign says they're working on it, but voters do not have that information at this point.
All right, let's turn to Ed now. Ed, what can we expect to hear from both the Trump and Biden campaigns as far as messaging goes? Is this going to be the dominant message for the next 45 days here?
Certainly will be for the Republicans, Jeff. Look, the Trump campaign message right now, or the slogan, one of them, promises made, promises kept. The biggest promise he's arguably made to his base of support, conservative voters, is not only putting 2 Supreme Court justices on the bench, but also hundreds of judges on district and appeals courts across the country. Record-setting numbers. They have essentially cleared the vacancy list. 4 years ago, 1 in 5 voters went to the polls and told us on Election Day they were there because of the Supreme Court. This was, in the final days of the 2016 campaign, the reason that the Republican coalition coalesced behind Donald Trump despite the concerns they might have had about him. They have been running that playbook again this year. Vice President Pence especially has been traveling the country telling evangelicals and conservative audiences, don't forget, you elect Joe Biden, you're going to get liberal justices on the court. You keep us in place, you'll get more conservative justices. Well, now that message just gets amplified. Joe Biden, however, turns around and makes an argument that was made 4 years ago. The voters should pick a president, and that president should elect a successor to Justice Ginsburg, arguing that let this election go through, then let's start the nomination and confirmation process. But Republicans will turn right around and say, we did elect a president. We elected him 4 years ago, and Donald Trump is ready to put on a successor.
Ed, as Paula mentioned, Joe Biden has not released a potential list of nominees. Why not, and will he now?
So I was the one that asked him about this back in late June. I said, look, the president has this list. He put it out 4 years ago. Would you do the same thing? There have been liberal organizations pushing him to do so, arguing that just as it's an issue for the right, it should be a galvanizing issue on the left. But Biden told me, one thing I hesitate to do is follow anything this president does because he does it all wrong. But, he said, I will at some point release a list of the black women that I would consider nominating to the Supreme Court after they're fully vetted. Last week, when that list was released by the president again, we asked the Biden campaign, how's the vetting going? Where's the list? We heard nothing. They are likely now to face renewed pressure to come up with that list, put it forth, and give voters a sense of who these black women are that he would consider to put on the court.
It's certainly a subject of debate. Paula, now, how will this process play out on Capitol Hill?
Well, Michelle, buckle up. Last night, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell confirmed that the president's nominee will get a vote on the floor. But typically, Supreme Court nominees take months for a confirmation. So it's unlikely this will happen before the election. But there will be time during a lame duck session after the election to push this through. Now, of course, Mitch McConnell famously denied former President Barack Obama his nominee, Merrick Garland. But going forward, it's expected that McConnell will try to use this vacancy to galvanize supporters in November, arguing that they need momentum behind this nominee, even for the lame duck session. It's important to note, though, right before her death, former Justice Ginsburg dictated this statement to her granddaughter, saying that her most fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed. It appears that the wheels are in motion for that wish not to be granted.
Oh, Paula Reid at O'Keefe, we thank you this morning for being here.